Welcome, y'all. I'm Deeg. These are Deeg Thoughts, here today to talk and think about the macro effect of micro transactions. What the hell does that mean? Well, there's a whole world of things you can say and think about and analyze where microtransactions are concerned. I'm sure you've got plenty of opinions about microtransactions that you probably feel pretty strongly about. I do too. I'm not here to solve all these problems. What I'm here to do is to think about the way that microtransactions and the way they've been implemented, especially in free-to-play games over the last 10 years, have had an effect on the way games are made and designed, and to ask ourselves the question of how we should anticipate games that have planned microtransactions. Of course, for those of you all who follow gaming news, you may be smelling the fact that this is all a riff on the recent, shall we call it drama, coming out of New World, which is Amazon's in-development MMO planned for release later this year. Let's have a look at that. Beep, boop, beep. Press a few buttons. Bow. Here we go. I'll read that. This orange on black's a little rough. Okay. I'll read it. So this was posted on New World's internal alpha boards. It got leaked, and I'm showing it here for you today. Premium Currency Shop internal testing. New World is introducing in-game purchases for special cosmetic items for players in their in-game homes. We'll sell cosmetics in the form of item skins, dyes, company crests, and emotes. We may sell quality of life items or boosts that will help players improve their time spent leveling up their character and trade skill experience. We're committed on. It makes me shudder. I'm just going to correct that. We're committed to keeping the competitive systems fair and balanced for all customers, and purchases will not provide a competitive edge over another player who chooses not to purchase additional items. During the May release, we'll be testing our in-game store. Players will be seated with a new currency, Marks of Fortune, that can purchase a lumberjack skin, a premium emote, and red, black, and gold dye packs. For a limited time during May, the in-game storefront will be activated for testing using the granted Marks of Fortune. The items you acquire through this test will not be permanent. Future premium currency testing will come in June and July. Boom. So, New World, right now, let's create some context. We need context. What the fuck is New World? New World is a fantasy MMO by Amazon Game Studios, we mentioned before, a studio that is becoming famous for killing its babies after killing Crucible brutally in the public spotlight after a failed release and a frantic pullback to beta. And on any number of projects we both have and haven't heard of. Y'all remember Breakaway? That plus New World plus Crucible were the three games that Amazon announced in 2017, I believe at TwitchCon, if I'm remembering right, that were going to be their big bets on AAA gaming. And only one of the three still going. Originally, New World was planned for a release last year. Last year, at some point, they realized that they needed to go back to the drawing board on a bunch of stuff. So what did they do? They put out a public test to say, hey, here's an experience we can show you today to give you a taste. And we're going to delay it for a year, roughly. Which at the time, I was very glad to hear. So I got a chance to play the New World beta. You know what? Let's find some more entertaining B-roll while I'm briefly summarizing this. Yeah, this will be better. Shout out to this guy for the no commentary gameplay. So I got a chance to play the New World beta last year. Sorry, it wasn't a beta. It was called a public preview or something like that. And what stood out to me about it at the time is, number one, the combat is different than other MMO type games. There's no tab targeting. It's all aimed. It's a little bit like Dark Souls, third person, over the shoulder, mix of melee and ranged combat. So that stands out as being interesting and different all by itself. It's set in a like a 15th, 16th century New World, so like North America. But instead of there being Native Americans there, there's a bunch of zombies and shit. There's some controversy apparently because the game was originally intended to have a native humanoid species, race, something like that, that apparently got shit canned because it was deemed to be offensive. And I'm sure you can guess a lot of reasons why that might be. Any case, so what jumps out at me about New World is that the world feels pretty cool to engage with. I only got in a newbie number of hours, like 30, 40 hours. And I enjoyed all of them. There's a lot of emphasis on gathering, a lot of emphasis on trade and on crafting. The world looks great. It feels good to move around. The UI is nice and clean. The combat feels interesting, at least on a small scale. So all those things look great. Now, what was obviously not there during the preview last year? Well, any sense of what the fuck you were supposed to do and what the game was supposed to breadcrumb you towards. So at the time, I had these open world zones. You progress through them. There's levels. You level up. You progress your weapon skills. Great. You increase one of a few different stats on your character. Okay, fine. But why? Why are you doing all this? Well, New World went through a period of redesign before this preview event, and I don't know how much of this is public. And so, what I'll say about it is that I believe New World was originally pitched as a heavy PvP MMO. And at some point, there was a decision to go back on that idea and turn it around into being more of a traditional theme park fantasy MMO, similar to what you see everywhere. So, they're giving us dungeons. They're giving us battlegrounds. They're putting in all these systems that exist in every other fantasy MMORPG you've ever heard of in the modern era. They're putting in voice-acted quests. They're putting in lots of stuff and quality of life that you would expect to see from a AAA MMORPG. The question is, will they be able to find enough to set them apart from these games, in my mind? So that's the context. And here we see that New World, like everyone else in this game, is wanting to monetize players' time. And they're doing all the normal things that companies do, especially in the West. So there's a divide between Western and Eastern markets in terms of what kinds of microtransactions are acceptable culturally. And I haven't studied this, but my layman's understanding is that, roughly speaking, in the West, as long as a microtransaction doesn't give a player an advantage when it comes to core mechanical gameplay, people accept it. Especially when this comes to combat. Don't fuck with my combat when it comes to microtransactions, and you can tell me whatever else you want. This has kind of been the line in the sand that Western gamers have drawn for years. Sell me cosmetics. That's fine. Some games you can even get away with selling in-game gold directly. Guild Wars 2 does this. Quality of life items, so things that'll make you level up faster, things that'll make it easier, and give you less downtime as you're playing through a game. And MMOs are a ripe space to have quality of life items because they're often designed to make you spend your time. I watched a video by Josh Hayes, known as Strife, and he said that the advantage of these kinds of models, which are traditionally presented in a free-to-play context, is that they give you the choice of spending your time or your money. That's the core conceit. And that's what New World seems to be doing. They're going down this road. So why am I talking about this? Well, this all by itself is not that interesting. But what I found interesting is the public response to this leak, which was surprisingly bombastic. Let's have a look at a couple of responses. So this is just hilarious. Check this shit out. So this is from Steven on Discord. Anyone want to guess who Steven is? No guesses? All right, I'll tell you. Steven is Steven Sharif. He is the CEO of Ashes of Creation, which is a crowd-funded / privately funded. I don't know how it's being funded. It's an indie MMORPG being created by a guy with a lot of money who loves video games. And I don't mean to sell that short. He's got a lot of talent on board. They're showing serious progress. It seems to be a real thing that's really going to happen. The show isn't about Ashes of Creation, but this is a guy who has a lot to lose by speaking up on this stuff. And here's what he says. I really enjoyed how it was stated they would include quality of life items. Oh, and I love the alternating case stuff here. Like level boosts and trade skill boosts. But nothing that affects competitive aspects of the game? ... Question mark, exclamation point? Why you do this, Amazon? I was flattered when they drew inspiration from some of my designs. But honestly, who the fuck made this decision? I want some new blood in the genre, for fuck's sake. It's all over the place. So, he doesn't really say what his problem with this is, but I think what we can infer is that Steven is something of an MMO purist. I don't know how Ashes of Creation will be monetized. I have no idea. But MMO purists often point back to things like Vanilla World of Warcraft, and older games like EverQuest, where there was no cash shop, which meant that what you did was everything that you saw in the world came from playing the game. We need Kevin Jordan to weigh in here. I'm gonna try to speak for KJ here. I'm pretty sure I know what he would say about this. But I also think that we're going to try to get past what KJ would say. Because as much as I love Kevin Jordan, he too is something of a purist. And purists are great, and they're wonderful to listen to, right up until you need to make a useful distinction and a useful decision and create a useful model. Because purism doesn't seem to track in the real world, in my experience. But anyway, so why should we care? Okay, I just wanted to show it because I thought it was funny. This guy shouldn't have been talking this way. I don't know what the context of this Discord is. I'm not sure how public this was. Maybe someone in bad faith shared it. Gamers are being gamers. What can you do? So Steven came out and he apologized later on Reddit. So we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into the drama and read this and see what Steven has to say. I agree my commentary was unprofessional, and I will endeavor to be more tempered in my response on issues I care a lot about. Sometimes it's difficult when, as a player, I was excited for their MMO and what is brought to the MMO space, which desperately needs new, successful products. I think that's true. I think that's really true. And it needs differentiated products, too. Not just people that are all trying to copy each other. I also have a strong view that cosmetics and subs are a good monetization strategy for maintaining content updates on MMORPGs. We all know that what free-to-play causes and buy-to-play causes a high barrier to entry, though I'm not as opposed to buy-to-play. The optimal business model IMO is a sub with cosmetics-only shop. This is hedging more to the purist mindset, the subscription model. You pay for the access to the world, and then everything in the world is about what you do in the world. Not about bringing in money, not about bringing in extra shit, not about paying for skips. I will say, as a gaming boomer, this has some appeal to me. But let's read the rest of this. Reasoning. Subs supply developers with a steady income to make content. MMOs live and die from their content. Also incentivize the team to perform with that content, meaning content will need to be good to retain users over a period of time, not just during that content launch. In a buy-to-play game, companies already have your money, and their interest in retaining the user is diminished to a degree. Of course, if they still wish to retain the user, but when that user leaves, they aren't dropping their sub, and buy-to-play games can consider the next revenue event, aka an expansion, etc., as an opportunity to win back the user. And so this is kind of similar to like a Guild Wars 2 type game, where they charge you for expansions. The game is free to play between the expansions, But also Guild Wars 2 has a very extensive cash shop, which we're going to look at later. On the shop side, I cannot express my opinion on this any stronger. Like many in the gaming community, I have experienced great games die because the company introduced pay to advantage. Whether that advantage is a winning one or a quality of life one, it undermines the content, the player base's efforts, the core gameplay loops, and lessens the sense of reward a player feels when they achieve something. Cosmetics, in my opinion, can supply additional revenues in a respectful way so long as they are in-game achievable visuals that match and exceed the ornate complexity of what's offered in the cosmetic shop, and purchased cosmetics aren't tradable. So Steven is making a distinction between in-game earnable cosmetics and cash shop cosmetics. So if you have a game where it has a very friendly model and only tells you cosmetics through the shop, but the only cosmetics anyone wants to use are the shop ones because they look so much better than the in-game earnable ones, then you don't really have a choice whether to use the shop or not. People will use the shop. And this points back to what to me is a very simple way of explaining this is what incentives are being created for players and companies with the way these shops and games are designed. We're going to explore this more as we continue. Anyway, resuming, that is key. And I know we've taken our own flack for our pre-order system, of which I have tried my best to engage and explain how our packages work and how our cosmetics offered are used in variants to actually help build our world. Furthermore, cosmetics must be the actual skins, meaning the player must first achieve the actual mount or building or armor in-game, and then apply the skin they purchased. Bottom line, the MMO community is diverse, has many opinions on the aspects of monetization. So, of course, we'll have our own opinions. That's fine. But the best thing a company can do is to be upfront about their monetization intents from the start and do their absolute best to stick to what they said. And if changes are needed, explain why. Announcing the changes that were announced, and in a way it was announced, I felt was disrespectful. It saddens me as a player and member of the MMO development industry to see that. And so I spoke unfiltered, and I apologize. Won't happen again. Milsim, I want to inflict my fashion upon my enemy players. If the cash shop has better stuff, the answer is already there for you. Inflict your fashion. I like the sound of that. That's it. So I don't know what Steven's got his panties in a twist about in terms of not announcing things clearly. But that's what Steven has to say. So how did New World react to all this? Well, New World has been all over social media. If you're on Twitter and you're in MMO Twitter at all, you'll know that New World actively comments and responds to people. People say nice things about their game. They're highly likely to respond to you. It's really interesting to see. And here's how they responded to the reaction to the cash shop leak. Can I zoom this? Hang on. There we go. That's better. This is from Rich Lawrence, a studio director. Some questions have come up recently from our alpha patch notes discussing an in-game storefront. Our plan in having a store is to create an outlet for players who find enough value in store items that they are happy to purchase them. That sentence has some words, but not much meaning in it. Our plan is not and never will be to create a feeling that store items are necessary to enjoy the game. All players will be able to play the full game experience we ship without having to make store purchases. Man, I bet you it took them a long time to write this. This is a lot of Weasley type language. All store items at launch will be exclusively cosmetic in nature. We're introducing the storefront in alpha in order to test these items and their value, which on the surface makes sense. No selections in the store or their indicated cost during testing. There is no real cost in any case. It's final. Our purpose is quality assurance and gathering player feedback, so please share your thoughts once the system is introduced. The testing audience will see each type of item we are considering and have an opportunity to provide feedback before they are introduced to the live game. Looking forward to the future, we will also test ideas on how to offer players quality of life items for mechanics like rested experience and fast travel. both obtainable in-game and purchasable in the store. The timing of releases for these types of items will depend on how players progress in the months after launch. The more players who are able to experience all of our exciting end-game content and game modes, the healthier the overall game experience will be for all players. Our goal with all items of any type is that they not offer an advantage that imbalances the game. We understand that this line is based on player interpretation, so we ask for your patience while we test in alpha and listen to your feedback. For transparency on future plans, we're also contemplating but have not finalized a Battle Pass style program that will combine store items on a periodic basis. This will also be tested ahead of time to ensure it provides strong value without disrupting gameplay for those not participating. Much further along, there's also the possibility of optional expansions, which would have a separate cost. Again, all this is bog standard MMO monetization stuff. Live services game do this everywhere. So why is this a big deal? Why are people flipping out about this? Now we go back to Kriparian's tweet. He says, in New World, they plan to sell quality of life and boosts now. Boosts aside, how is it okay to sell quality of life features for a game that hasn't even released yet? Why not just improve the quality? And that kind of simple logic cuts right to the heart of something that people are waking up to. You see, these gamers, especially ones who have been playing MMO since the 2000s, have seen microtransactions sneak into their virtual worlds. And the initial kind of negotiations that we made with these studios to be like, we're okay with this. We'll support you this way. Cosmetics, fine. Boosts, fine. But don't you dare sell me power. Don't you dare sell me a combat advantage. Or especially my enemy. Don't sell my enemy a combat advantage. But people are starting to wake up to what I'm going to call the macro effects of these microtransactions, about the kinds of worlds and experiences that result from having things like boosts, from having things like cosmetics in the store, from having the ability to trade in-game effort for out-of-game effort. And here, I've got to turn it over to Asmongold. He did a bombastic reaction video to all this. And I don't always agree with Asmon. I don't agree with everything he has to say here. But hot damn, he says some stuff pretty well and directly. We're going to have a listen.
This is the post that New World made in response to people's concerns about their store. Some questions have come up recently from our alpha patch notes discussing an in-game storefront. Our plan in having a store is to create an outlet for players who find enough value in store items that they are happy to purchase them. Thank God that's explained for me, because I didn't know that. I thought the value of the store was to just put things out there and not have people buy them. Our plan is not, and never will be, to create a feeling that store items are necessary.
He's so angry.
To
I love it.
the game.
He's so
All
pissed.
Players will be able to play the full game experience we ship without having to make store purchases. Well, that's a little bit of a caveat, because like you probably can't get a lot. So like basically here's the two outcomes, right? So you either can't get the cosmetic rewards that the store gives you, or you can, and you can buy them from other players, which allows you to buy gold indirectly. This is what BDO has. So either one of the outcomes of this being the case makes this statement untrue. All store items at launch will be exclusively cosmetic in nature. So that means that they are waiting to add these things in later on. We are introducing the storefront in alpha in order to test these items and their value. No selections in the store or their indicated cost. During testing, there is no real cost in any case, is final. Good, make it 0. Our purpose is quality assurance and gathering player feedback, so please share your thoughts once the system is introduced. Why do we have to wait?
I forgot he read all this. I'm sorry, guys.
Like, what are we waiting to find out? Like, what is it, like a secret? Like, what are we holding back? Like, like, you clearly gave examples of what you're thinking of selling. You're talking about selling cosmetics. This right here is why I'm so fucking glad that they didn't make the Lord of the Rings MMO. Our purpose is quality assurance and gathering player feedback, so please share your thoughts once the system is introduced. The testing audience will see each type of item that we are considering and have an opportunity to provide feedback as they are introduced to the live game. And we will provide that feedback. Yes, and that is the feedback that we will provide. Looking forwards to the future, we will also test ideas on how to offer players quality of life mechanics like rested experience and fast travel, both obtainable in-game and purchasable in the store. So, I'm gonna skip just for a second, and I want to pull up a tweet that was made by somebody who you guys know I like a lot. Read this.
Oh no.
In New World, this is from Kriparian. In New World, they plan to sell quality of life boosts now. Boosts aside, how is it okay to sell quality of life features for a game that hasn't even released yet? Why not just improve the quality? If you are releasing quality of life features on a game that is not even released, it implies that the existence of those features makes the experience worse. And so what you are doing is you are creating a problem and then paying yourself to solve it. I'm going to unlike this so I can like it again. Offer players quality of life items for mechanics.
Oh, he's on a
rested
roll.
Experience. How many of you guys were proud of the first character that you got to max level in an MMO? Let me ask you another question. Would you feel the same way if you just knew that somebody else standing right next to you at the same level that you are bought it? Whenever you buy something,
no, we would not, Asvin.
that something no longer matters. That's why I don't care about TCG
I couldn't say this
mounts or
better
store
than
mounts in my mount offs. It's not impressive to me that somebody has a Swift Spectral Tiger. Wow, you have $10,000. Congratulations. That doesn't mean shit to me. The timing of release of the
Asmund does not respect people who trade in-game effort for out-of-game effort. To him, the game world is sacrosanct. And if you fuck with it from the outside, then you should get fucked. And I think that the proper way to approach that argument is to come up with a proper counter argument. And I think we're going to get there in a few minutes, but this is good. This is so good.
These types of items will depend on how players progress in the months after launch. The more players who are able to experience all of our exciting in-game content and game modes, the healthier the overall game experience will be for all players. I completely disagree with that. Why is a success metric of the game the amount of people that complete it? Shouldn't it be the amount of people that are playing and experiencing it? Because under that logic, Warlords of Draenor is a more successful expansion and part of the game than Burning Crusade or Vanilla WoW.
Ripping them
because
apart.
more people hit max level in Burning Crusade, in Warlords of Draenor or in Battle for Azeroth. Success of a player is not success of the game. This is the same thing with WoW. Like, just because you beat Denathrius, that's not a success metric of the game. Beating the game is not a success metric. Enjoying the game is a success metric. Our goal with all items of any type is that they will not offer an advantage that imbalances the game. For transparency on future plans, we are also contemplating, but have not finalized, a battle pass. A battle pass style program that would combine store items on a periodic basis. This would also be tested ahead of time to ensure it provides strong value without disrupting gameplay for those not participating. Why are we doing this? Why is this happening? I don't understand it. Like, what is this? Like, do they even understand? Like, who wants this? Who asked for this?
I
Like,
might sub to Asmon just for this
so
video.
This
is so good.
Shop. I'm going to read this post here. New World is introducing in-game purchases for special cosmetic items for players and their in-game homes. We will sell cosmetics in the form of items, skins, dyes, company crests, and emotes. We may sell quality of life items or boosts that will help players improve their time spent leveling their character or trade skill experience. The game's not even out yet. It's not even out yet, and they're doing this horse shit. So this is a post that Steven made about
Oh, Asmon. My boy Asmon. So good. Milsim Prodigy. Haven't these tests already been run? Like, do these people not have any perspective on what's already been done and what works? That's a great question, man. Yeah, like, I'll tell you the vibe I get from New World. So, I made a video talking about it. It must have been last year after the test. I don't remember when I did it. But my feeling about New World is that it's a game in search of a design. See, Amazon knows that they want to make a $1 billion IP, but they don't really care how they do it. And I think that they realized that a PvP MMO, which is their original design, was never going to be a $1 billion IP, and they had to go theme park mode. And so they're just borrowing from the greatest hits of MMOs. And I don't know if they have a strong central vision of what they want, so much as an optimism that they can staple on stuff that works and hanging off of their core IP and hope it all works. Rel, this sort of thing you do to try to get the community on board with something you're already planning to do. So, like, kind of break the news, like, kind of soften people up. Is that what you mean, Rel? Milsim, yeah, you can't start with the premise of I want to make money. Make a good game first. All the rest here is marketing speak for what Rel said. Yeah, we're putting this in anyway. Rel, you start strong and walk it back based on feedback. Right. Yeah, right. And the other tactic that we've seen, especially with like AAA single player games, is games that launch without microtransactions, and then they have them added after the review period kind of ends. So it seems like the thing that New World's doing here, that if they fucked up anything, which is that this stuff got leaked at the same time the WoW Classic, Burning Crusade Classic news cycle was being dominated by discussion of boosts and the in-game cash shop, which I'm sure is why Asmon's come into this pissed. Because he's seeing something that to him was a sacred experience be tainted. So, and what he's pissed about, I think, is, it's an indicator of a growing maturity in the consumer base when it comes to video games. That, in that the question of whether or not I would feel okay with me myself purchasing something, or okay if my enemy purchased it, which was where people have been for a while, is starting to grow to the point of, well, what kind of incentives are created by this kind of a system? So another thing that really flavors this, I think, for Asmon is going to be the way WoW Classic planned out. Lex, you and I talked about this last week. WoW Classic, of course, didn't have any microtransactions, but what it did have is rampant botting and rapid RMT. RMT being real money transaction, which is these bots, which make up, by some estimates, more than 40% of global World of Warcraft subscriptions. Spending all day automatically farming materials and selling it to get a bunch of gold in game to sell to people for cash outside the game. People buy this gold with cash, and then it creates this whole economy in the game that starts and ends with botters, and results in the dissolution of player guilds for doing raids. This system called Gold DKP, GDKP, has become the ascendant model for a lot of people to run content, and it's all based on RMT. It really corrupted what should have been a throwback experience for a lot of people. And there's this question, right, about this growing level of understanding of what we're actually signing up for when we get free to play. Now, I think that the Western gaming space, when it comes to free to play, especially when it comes to core like PC gaming and console gaming markets, has always been more conservative in its monetization strategies compared to, like, say, mobile games. Like, mobile games is the Wild West. You can't even compare it. Or even Eastern market games for similar things, where they're much more comfortable selling player power. But Western core gamer markets, I think WoW, I think the Burning Crusade Classic is at least somewhat responsible for this growing awareness, are starting to wake up to be like, hey man, when you put these incentives in my game, it makes the game bad. I don't remember if I want to watch the rest of this video or not. Let me scan ahead for a minute. Also, what's up, Henry? How's it going?
The New World information. I agree my commentary was unprofessional, and I will
aspects of the game. Why you do this, Amazon?
Get lazy, and it will get shitty. The more and the longer that you spend without competing with somebody else, that's one of the good things. People always talk about the bad shit about capitalism. One of the good things, and you can say this is capitalism or not, whatever the fuck you want to call it, one of the good things about the system that we have is if somebody comes in there and they make a better game than you, other people play it, and everybody else has to adapt to that. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. Whenever Xbox One came in and they said, you know what? We're going to make it to where the game always has to be online. We're going to make it to where your webcam has to always be connected. And we're going to make it to where you can't resell your games. So we're going to do all of these super consumer unfriendly practices. Was it PS3? I don't remember. I think it was PS4. But regardless, we're going to do all of these super consumer unfriendly practices, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you know what happened? Sony came out around there, and they said, we're not going to make it to where you always have to be online. We're not going to make it to where you can't resell your games, and we're not going to make you attach a webcam to your fucking console to play a video game all the time. And you know what happened? So many people said, fuck Xbox, I'm not going to buy Xbox anymore. And you know why? Because they had a better alternative. And you know what happened? Xbox turned around, they apologized, and they undid everything. That's what happens whenever you have competition.
Wisdom of the
If
markets.
there was no PS4, we would be sitting here with an Xbox with the camera on all the fucking time, watching you masturbate to Cortana while you're driving the Warthog into the wall so the controller vibrates against your dick. And it's getting broadcast to
Seems
the
accurate.
world because it's connected to the internet. That you had to buy for $70 because you couldn't get it out of the bargain bin at GameStop.
Asmongold, consumer advocate.
Very specific?
Hell yeah.
Yes, it is. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
You picking up what I'm putting down? You catching what I'm throwing? You seeing what I'm doing? Whew. Let me read the rest of this post. Competition breeds excellence. I also have a strong view that cosmetics and subs are good monetization strategy for maintaining.
Oh, what did he
content
say about
updates on
this? I want to hear
MMOs.
this.
We all know that free-to-play causes buy-to-play. Free-to-play, what free-to-play causes and buy-to-play causes high barrier to entry. Though I'm not opposed to buy-to-play. I agree. I prefer buy-to-play. The optimal business model, in my opinion, is a sub with cosmetic-only shop. I'm okay with the sub. Cosmetic-only shop, I'm not okay with as long as there's... I mean, if there's cool armor in-game, I'm okay with it. I'm generally not okay with it, but I will deal with it. I think that's probably the best way to say it. Reasoning. Subs supply the developers with steady income to make content, and MMOs live and die from their content. It also incentivizes the dev team to perform with that content. That's true. Meaning that the content will need to be good and retain users over a period of time, not just during that content launch. In a buy-to-play game, companies already have your money, and their interest in retaining the user is diminished to a degree. Of course, they want to retain the user, but when the user leaves, they aren't dropping their sub, and buy-to-play games can consider that the next revenue event, like an expansion, exactly. On the shop side, I cannot express my opinion on this any stronger. Like many in gaming community, I have experienced great games die because a company introduced a pay-to-win advantage. Whether that advantage is winning one or a quality of life one. It undermines the content, the player base's efforts, the core gameplay loops, and lessens the sense of reward a player feels whenever they achieve something. Cosmetics, in my opinion, can supply additional revenues in a respectful way, so long as there are in-game achievable visuals that match and exceed the ornate complexities of what's offered on the cosmetics shop. That is the key. I know that we've taken our own flack for a pre-order.
I cannot wait. I mean, I'm just about 30 years from now. All right. Asmongold, the red, let's call him Asmongold the Red, has matured into Asmongold the Gray. I cannot wait for Longbeard Asmongold of the future. I don't know why. I just had a flash of envisioning that. Such a fascinating dude. And I don't know. I think he's really tapping into something here.
System, of which I've tried my best to engage and explain how our packages works and how our cosmetics are offered and used in variants to actually help the world. The MMO community is diverse and has many opinions on the aspects of monetization, so of course people have their own opinions, and that's fine.
He's very good at reading fast.
The best thing a company can do is be upfront about their monetization intents from the start and do their absolute best to stick what they've said, even if their changes need to, and if there are changes, explain why. Announcing the changes that were announced and the way that it was announced I felt was disrespectful, and it saddens me as a player and as a member of the MMO development industry to see that. So I spoke unfiltered, and for that I apologize. It should not happen again. I hope it does. I much rather direct conversation and direct words. Yeah. Anyway, $500 alpha, by the way. He explicitly said multiple times that don't buy it for the $500 alpha. Like, I don't know what you want him to do. Like, it's the same as, like, yeah, it's weird. I'm gonna read the Lazy Peon's response. If you're going to add convenience, just don't have it there for launch. Wait a few months so people can enjoy the game normally first. Also, don't create problems to sell solutions. Cosmetics, furniture, and pets are fine. Cosmetic only battle pass I can live with. I am much more okay with that. I am much more okay with that. Amazon has yet to release a successful game. The focus of New World can't be make all the money. It needs to be about getting that first successful flagship title release that you can build upon in the future, as well as showcase the potential of Lumberyard. Lumberyard is their development engine. That is true.
Are they going to license Lumberyard?
And then New World actually responded to this. Shout out to New World for doing that. I don't know any other company that would really do this. It isn't about rushing people to endgame. It's about supporting people who don't have as much time to play and helping them reach the endgame with the time available to them. You know what I really hate about this? Is the idea and the narrative that they're using here, that they're sticking up for the little guy. They're sticking up for, Bill, the 31-year-old dad that's, he's got, his wife is giving him trouble and he's got to work at the coal mine and he's only got 2 hours a week to play the game. They don't give a fuck about Bill. They just want his fucking money. And if you want to use these people as like some sort of a distraction or some sort of a shield from criticism for this bullshit, I don't want to hear about it. The fact is that you don't need to complete the content in order to enjoy the game. I think the best example of this, more people hit max level in Shadowlands or in BFA, and they have a less fulfilling experience than the people who did not reach max level in Classic WoW and just leveled the whole time. If you see your content is skippable or not relevant, that buying a boost is a good way to get into real content, then you failed to create interesting content progression. Make leveling faster if you care about people wasting their time or if in-game is all you care about. And then New World responded, MMOs take a tremendous time investment and not everyone has available. Boost can be a way for someone who doesn't have time to get more out of the time that they play and support the game and community in another way. If MMOs take a tremendous time investment that everybody has not everybody has available.
How much more of this
and
is
if
there?
The time investment is so big that it's a problem that you're going to have to sell boosts for it, then why not just make it shorter in the first place? Yes, MMOs take a large time investment. That's why people play MMOs, is they want to invest themselves into something that they can do regularly, that they can work on over time. And whenever somebody else gets it, that's why people play. And if that's a problem for somebody, they don't understand that. Like, if they solved that problem for somebody, they effectively solved somebody else's fulfillment from the game.
Let's pause on that note. I'm even seeing some good discussion in the chat. But before I read that, Asmon, it must be said, is speaking up for the no-lifers here. The people who can pay with their time. And I don't agree or disagree with him here, but I think it's a perspective that must be weighed. And I think it's a perspective that over time is being increasingly underserved. And I guess we can decide amongst ourselves how important and how represented that perspective is among the global gamer base. But so one of the things about classic WoW that I love, about vanilla WoW, I'm going to call it vanilla, not classic. I'm going to distinguish between the two. One thing I loved about vanilla WoW is how fucking ugly warrior armor got to be at a certain point. You get into, tier 2.5 on Courage gear. You have a mishmash of stuff. You're purple, you're red, you're just like, you look like you fell into a trash can. And some people would say that's lame. But the thing that's cool is being the first person on your server to have a Dark Edge of Insanity, whether or not you like the look of it. When you have a game world where everything in the game can be reliably traced back to a certain action in the game or a certain series of actions in the game, not affected by externalities, like a cash shop, then you can more reliably assign meaning to someone's achievement, to someone's status, to someone's level, to a piece of gear, things like that. For me, that was one of the things I most loved about WoW Vanilla and got me really excited. I've talked in previous content before about this one orc warrior who I used to always bump into in the city, whose name was Bogus. And he always had the best shit. And he always, whenever I saw him in Battlegrounds, he always wrecked. There weren't a lot of great players back in those days, so there weren't a lot of other warriors I saw in Battlegrounds who would outperform me, even without me having the best gear. But he just was terrifying. And that, to me, he was like someone I'd love to look up to. And I could look up to it because I knew that he didn't buy any of that shit. I knew that he didn't skip progression. And yeah, there was a little bit of boosting going on back then, but all in game. And there was RMT going on back then, but it was on a much smaller scale. And that's the kind of value system that Asmongold is identifying with here. Hey Pebble, these are some Deeg thoughts. The Deeg thoughts are hanging out back there for the after show. But okay, let's catch up with chat. Rel says it's not an easy position to be in, honestly. To go back to the botting example, as a company, you're thinking to yourself, well, people are botting. We can't stop them. Why don't we make money instead? Enter selling character level boost, experience boost, yada, lower the friction, make it legal. Not that you disagree with what he's saying here. You think the knock-ons of making decisions like this are still something the industry is making sense of. I think, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Rel. I think that the thing that gamers are starting to see about those kinds of situations are the incentives, right? So right now, because there's always going to be a firewall about communication between game developers and studios and gamers who play their games, just because the stakes are different. And we've talked about this before, right? We cannot trust when a publisher says that we're selling boosts for accessibility. We cannot trust when they say they can't deal with the bots. It's hard for us to really believe that there's an effort going on to get rid of the bots when we know that the game company has an incentive to permit the bots. And the perception becomes, we believe that this company is acting in the way they're incentivized to act. And that's kind of the brush I'm wanting to use to explore this kind of situation, is what are the incentives and how can we nudge them one way or the other? You get where I'm coming from. Oh, Lex. Okay, let's read what Lex has to say. Lex says, I think the frustration's more out of the attitude of we can't stop people botting, especially if it's a group that doesn't even try or put forth any meaningful effort to do it. For the WoW Classic example, it takes 5 minutes to go into a server and who Black Rock Depths or who Stratholme and ban all the ungilded rogues and mages. But you don't pay to have GMs to do anything. So to turn a flawed premise of we can't do anything about it into a very convenient, let's make money on top of the bots paying for subs by also providing our own boosts, etc. Well, I get where you're coming from. It shouldn't be used as an excuse to turn a profit, but it's one of the many reasons for sure. Incentive sums it up well. Yeah. And I honestly, I don't really believe that New World has like needle-fingered intent with this cash shop. I just think they're doing what they have seen work elsewhere. But people are taking their understanding of World of Warcraft, which we've seen in the last 2 years be a very moving target and a very high potential 2 years ago about a return to a pure experience that's all about the in-game world. And we've seen that idea crumble to pieces, to bits. And bitterness seems like it's at an all-time high in this community. That Asmon is one of the he's kind of like the Peter Pan of the Lost Boys, I think. Don't confuse malice with incompetence. Yeah, or don't confuse intent with circumstance. I think that's a useful way to look at individual interactions. But I think when we're dealing with aggregates, especially like when we're dealing with companies and the behavior of organizations, I think it's probably irresponsible to overlook incentives, even if they can be considered malicious. Because even without a single individual person to make a negative decision, a negative situation can be arrived to by the simple aggregation of individuals pursuing what they're individually incentivized to do. You have shareholders, you have stakeholders, you have investors you need to speak to. They need their numbers, right? So you have to make your game and sell it in a way that creates a story that means you get to keep continuing or growing as a business, or taking on new investments for other products, whatever it is. Those incentives are super important. And I think it's why you see some of the most interesting things these days coming out of smaller teams that have less accountability, that have fewer external incentives. But you can't make a World of Warcraft or a New World with a small amount of people. or on Ashes of Creation. So incentive. And of course, Asmongold has a clear incentive too. He's a no-lifer, and he has a community of people who are no-lifers. So he's speaking to these people. But this is a way of approaching games that I have done a lot in the past. I'm not there anymore. I can't no-life anything. But I respect it, and I will say that I resonate with the sense of meaninglessness that can sometimes be arrived at when you realize whatever anything you can work towards in a game can simply be gotten by just paying in. So, yeah. Let's see if Aspen has anything else interesting to say about this.
Like, by giving that person
And then we can go to phase 2 of this discussion.
that thing, they then took it away from the other person that had it. Oh, this is John. Oh, this is the guy that makes the videos. So let me read what he said.
Ooh, yeah. Josh Hayes. Josh Strife Hayes. I have no idea what his real name actually is. Probably Josh Hayes. This guy does lots of MMO content. He just today put out a video where he played the devil's advocate and gave a bunch of reasons why free to play and pay to win is good. Just as like a thought experiment to see if he could put up a good argument that he disagreed with. Very, very cool thing to do, I think.
If you're selling boosts, though, through early content, you're saying that early content isn't as fun or as inclusive as in-game. So just make the early content better so people who don't have as much time still enjoy it. You're already admitting your early game is dull. True. So let's go ahead and I'm going to explain
I like this.
what these developers are doing. So we have ourselves here an iceberg. Okay?
You know it's getting good when the paintbrush
The
comes out.
developers are trying to act like this little bit of the iceberg end-game PvP. Let's see. Best gear in-game. The problem is that the developers think that these two things are the only thing that people care about in MMOs. They're not thinking about, let's just look here. Leveling. Professions. Character. Looks cool. Story. Trading. Community. Visual. Rewards. Let's see. Store. Oh, sorry, not. I guess a better one is auction house. Yeah, auction house. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, auction house. Let's see here. Money. Yeah. Gold. Let's see here. Mounts. Well, they don't have mounts in the game, but sure, we'll just go ahead and add that anyway. Story. Oh yeah, I'll just do story again. Okay, yeah, there you go. Story. Oh wait, did I replace story with store? Oh. Sorry, I've just been playing too much WoW. Anyway, let's see here. Communication. Yeah, progression. Visual progression. Visual progression. Character progression. So here's the problem. RP. Yeah, sure. Quests. Exploration. Music.
Exploration.
Guild stuff. Let me just stop it right there, okay? Here's the problem. Is that these developers think that as long as they deal with this part right here, that's enough. They think that, oh, well, as long as the end game and the best gear in the game isn't from the store, then it doesn't matter. But here's the problem. Is that you want to see a real 99% argument? This is where 5% of the players exist. And this is where 95% of the players exist. They are reducing the experience and the fulfillment for the average player only to make the casual players, their experience less meaningful, less enjoyable, more hollow, and weaker and shittier. Blizzard.
What do you guys think of this? Y'all agree with Asman? One other bit of context I think is pretty interesting too. You look at the 5%. This is where all the content creators live, right? Well, most of them anyway. Another counter argument to what he's saying is that the content in the game that bears the most scrutiny, the most repeat experiences, is all up here too. So a little extra context. In the World of Warcraft community, one of the things that kind of got, I think, a lot of this outrage rolling was a interview in the last week or two between content creator Preach and World of Warcraft game director Ian Hazzikostas. And one of the things that Preach, I think, does really well is he's a good advocate for the 5%. And a very effective advocate for the 5%. And one of the things that comes out when he talks to Ian from time to time, because he has interviewed Ian Hazzikostas a few times, is that Preach doesn't have an understanding of what 95% care about. And there is this recent interview, one of the things that Ian said is that most players just have fun leveling up and enjoying the world. And they're not min-maxing their soul binds. And the world of players who do that, there are a lot of people who don't. And that's not a reality that Preach could accept when that interview was happening. And this is basically what Ian said is what Asman is echoing. That most players don't get obsessed with the end game stuff. Let's see what else he has to say.
Jesus Christ. Freudian slip. New World, Amazon. Designing the game and making the game with this in mind is only going to make it worse. That's all it's going to do. It's just going to make the game worse. Getting max level is not a success metric in the game. Playing the game and having fun with it is a success metric in the game.
Although you could argue getting max level is an indirect measure of enjoyment, right?
If max level or some form of completion in the game is a success metric, then Battle for Azeroth was probably one of the most successful expansions of all time. And Dark Souls sucks. Sekiro was a terrible game. How many people, like, a real honest question, how many people that played Sekiro do you think really even killed Guardian 8? Do you think really even killed Genichiro? Or even, like, in Ishin? Like, yeah. Like, I think probably less than 10% of people that played the game beat it. But it won Game of the Year because it was a good game.
Thank you, Asmongold. Fuck. That was some thick-ass content. Okay. So this is a two-phase discussion for me. To wrap up phase one, I want to show this series of tweets by, yes, a guy who we seem to talk about almost every week. Chris Kalecki, ex-World of Warcraft developer. I think this is a pretty good stub for launching into another way to think about this problem, this outrage about the way games are monetized and how that reflects on the game itself and the incentives and all that. Here's what he has to say. Thoughts on monetization in games, especially service ones. The way to think about monetization in games now is that it is designed by the same system designers designing progression, gameplay, the experience, not handed off to biz dev after the fact. Designers hate thinking about monetization because it feels dirty. But if you don't, your vision or experience you're trying to create for the player will be subverted by well-meaning business folks who are trying to get as much value out of your game as possible. So whereas before it was cool to hear directors say, don't worry about microtransactions, we're just here to make a great game, that now should worry you, because the microtransaction thesis should be sussed out by the director even before the game is blocked out. Marrying design and business. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a short break to top off. And we're going to come back and I'm going to think through a few examples of gaming experiences I've had and how they're monetized and how that affected the experience of those games. And I want to hear from you guys too. Yeah. Hope it'll be fun. I'll be right back. Ooh. Rel in the chat. I think it starts from having goals appropriate for your game first. Make as much money as possible is vague, but seems to be what most companies default to. Monetization can't be an afterthought either, though. Good example of guarding the experience too much is Global Agenda and Tribes Ascend. Both games seem to have monetization tacked on. Both games, while great fun, seem to be dead because of it. Well, should have been 2 posts. Right, so this is a very like gamer focused angle on the discussion, because it's all about how evil is the game. But the truth is, there's a sort of evil that comes from not asking for money that you should have gotten. What's the phrase? You can't have, you don't ask. Is it really better for the world if you don't ask for enough money for your game? And because of that, you can't make it or can't develop it or can't change it, can't take care of it. I know, Rel, that this is something you've given a lot of thought to. And actually, what I wanted to think about is how these microtransactions affect some games. And actually, I really hemmed and hawed. You have, yes, but on all sides of this conversation. I know you have. We talked about last year, and when I interviewed you, about how, here on this channel, about how big of a deal implants were for making PlanetSide work monetarily. In fact, let's have a look at that, shall we? But not right this second. Because part 2 of this discussion is, I just want to step through a few games that I've played. And I'm going to culminate by looking at a game called Guild Wars 2, which has an in-game store with a lot going on and a free-to-play business model, and it's kind of all over the place. And there are incentives going many different directions. And I want to think about that. We also take a trip through PlanetSide, although I think I have less to say about PlanetSide monetization. Mainly because, well, I'll get there. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we? I think the first thing I wanted to share, though, is this. Okay. So just to give you my old school creds, I'm about to show you the very first microtransaction. I'll be honest, I didn't pay for it. I pirated it. Oblivion Horse Armor. Who remembers this? Who remembers, boys and girls? The very first microtransaction for a core game. Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion is a fantasy RPG single player. And they sold some really actually good high quality DLC for their game. Like the Shivering Isles, which is like an expansion for the game. They sold Knights of the Nine, which is a great quest. What else am I forgetting? But one of them is Horse Armor, the very first one, and they charged $10 to put either elven or steel armor on your horse. No one knew what the right price for this was supposed to be. No one knew. I think if you tried to get more money out of someone for a single player game by selling cosmetics like this today, you'd be seen as being a bit grabby. But this is a fun time for me. Oblivion was actually a detox for me from World of Warcraft back in 2005, I want to say. I had just quit World of Warcraft after playing it every day for like 12 hours, like Asmongold style, for like 2 or 3 months in college. And running a 40-man raid guild and trying to grind PvP, and it was just like, I flamed myself out. And Oblivion was my detox. And yes, because it was in those days, I had the level of money I did then, I pirated it. I pirated this glorious microtransaction. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the let's actually have a look at PlanetSide for a second. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this in the end thing. We'll see if it's actually interesting or not. As usual with these productions, I don't have all the answers, but what I try to do is come with a series of interesting questions and an idea of how to explore them. So we'll see if this is actually worthwhile. But I'm launching PlanetSide. I'm going to show the depot for it. I'm going to talk through some of the way that PlanetSide monetizes and my experience of how it's affected the game for me. Now, it's worth saying that PlanetSide is a very different kind of game than New World or World of Warcraft. And that's part of why I wanted to bring it into the conversation. Also, it's a game that I know well. As long as we're talking PlanetSide 2, let's shift our Twitch category over. Okay. Check this guy out. Y'all like him? His armor is a microtransaction. It's pretty swank looking. I quite like it. This camo, a microtransaction. This helmet, a microtransaction. All cosmetic. Swagged out. Hell yes. I also have the Endeavor version of the NS11C, but for some reason, I just like the old school version. What other can I see on my camera? What else can I see on my characters? Okay, here's some more. Here's an NC character. This is an armor that you buy from the shop, using the same camo, like dark brown, I think it is, and a helmet from the shop. Do I have anything else to show off there? Oh yeah, I guess I bought armor for all 3 factions at one point, so you can see that here. I'm actually going to log into my NC. Okay. Here we are in Sanctuary. And yes, we are in Ultra for this. Let's have a look. Here's my loadout. How have microtransactions affected the way I play PlanetSide today? Helmet from the store. It's swag. I love it. Without it, what do I look like? Standard helmet? Yeah, you can see. It's Mandalorian. Love it. Armor, I love the Spartan armor. It's really cool looking, especially on some of the other classes. Here's standard issue. Small PP, big PP. Decals aren't really that interesting for infantry, I don't think. But camo, I have a few. These are all ones that you buy for in-game currency. All cosmetics. I think there's an argument to be made that these appearances can have an effect on gameplay. Some people use it to get an advantage, but I think for the most part, people just use the appearances stuff in this game to have fun. That's how I've used it. I don't worry too much about visibility. I don't take the game that seriously. No AC decal? Where would I get that, Lex? And here I have a couple of guns that I bought in the store. NS11 Endeavor Carbine. I love this gun. It's so cool. It's a reskin of the NS11C, which is a gun I love. And I unlocked its attachments with certifications. Same here is a reskin of the default Underboss. I got both of these in a pack on the depot, which you can see. What was that pack called? Starseeker? Is this it? Yeah, here we go. So for me, most of the money I put into PlanetSide, which by the way, I've been happy to put into PlanetSide, has come through these bundles that come out every anniversary with a ton of value in them. Look at all this stuff. I can very rarely pass up these bundles for the amount of value they have and because they give me a great excuse to support a game that I love. And let's have a look at what these things are. There's a banner. No, that doesn't show in the preview, does it? Banners show up on your nameplate when you kill people. So a nice little way to personalize your victory experience there, at least for your enemy. Luma Fiber gives you a way to give you some trim for your vehicles. This is kind of neat. A Firebug. This is a power knife variant, similar to other knives in the game, but it's you get it with this particular pack. And a bunch of other weapon reskins for all the common pool weapons. Lex says the absolute only gripe you have with this game's monetization is the ability to buy resource boosts. Interesting. I haven't given that any thought, Lex, but I get that. So let's have a look at that. So this character has no boosts on. But normally when I'm playing a lot of PlanetSide, I play with experience boosts because I just like to use my time efficiently. And for me, getting a high battle rank is highly incentivized. Why? Because of the advanced specialization program. And for me, the Light Assault SMG secondary, this is a game-changing ability that I get to faster if I use a boost. And to me, it's something of an outlier in terms of progression power in this game. So there's that. Let's see what else. The vehicle game can be very expensive in terms of certifications to get a vehicle set up. So some people just buy it with cash. Most things in the game that you can get with certs you can also buy with cash. So here's some exceptions. So leveling up this stuff you can't do, but I can buy additional weapons for my vehicles with cash money and that kind of stuff. What else? The thing Lexus mentioned is resource boosters. So if you go to boosts in the store, you can see these. This is what I was showing off earlier on my character slots. So if you play with a resource booster, which is what Lex is complaining about, let's try to find one of those bad boys. Resources. Why don't I see it? Am I too dumb? Purple arrows. Oh, it's called a nanite boost. Okay, that's why I wasn't seeing it. So here's a nanite boost, and what this does is, so the way that access to force multipliers in PlanetSide 2 works, for those who don't know, is you have a steady income of nanites that is steady all the time. Which means that if you try to spam too many tanks because you're getting killed and you pull them over and over again, eventually you're going to run to a point where you're out of nanites and you can't buy a new tank because you don't have enough nanites to do so. And you have to wait. But if you can dribble out your force multipliers slowly, then you don't usually run into a problem. For me, I only really run into resource issues with the way that I play, which means the infantry focused. when I play with C4. Because C4 requires 75 nanites per time I pull per C4 brick, and I usually pull 2, so it's 150 per death. So I'll get to a big tower fight, I'll get excited, I'll pull out C4, and a few deaths later, I'm out of resources. If I had a resource booster on, I could spam C4 that much more frequently. Or if I wanted to do that with max suits, which also cost resources to use, I could do that as well. So that's what Lex is talking about. If you really have a hard-on about force multipliers in PlanetSide, then this can be a pain point for you. I could see that. Me, I don't. Not something I care about a lot. And I'll tell you why. And the main reason I don't care about any of this stuff a lot when it comes to PlanetSide and monetization is because PlanetSide is, as you can see, a first-person shooter. And when you're playing on cons with a few hundred players. And so whenever it comes to actually playing the game, the main things that are going to determine whether or not you're successful is your individual competence and your interest in grouping with other players. And what you buy from the store compared to those two things is almost inconsequential in terms of your outcomes. Hey, red person. FPS killer. Say hello for the cameo, FPS killer. So because PlanetSide is a first-person shooter on a massive scale, the power of cooperation and individual skill vastly outweigh any microtransactions. Also, to PlanetSide's credit, a lot of this is by design. To PlanetSide's credit, weapons, for the most part, are all side grades. There's no best, there's just best at. Now, hairs have been split about this, and they will. I'm not here for that discussion today. But let's just say that most of the weapons are just side grade material. I think that's, for the most part, fair to say. And so if I buy a weapon in the depot today, it is not going to have anywhere near as much of an impact on my ability on the battlefield as if I spent an hour improving my skill or I spent an hour finding people to play with. Those two things have vastly more of an outcome. And so how does this affect the macro state of the game? Well, I think at the end of the day, the main impact that microtransactions and PlanetSide have is they gate access to implants. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I interviewed Raul last year talking about implants, and it seems like implants kind of saved PlanetSide too, in terms of its ability to make enough money to support itself. What is an implant? Let's briefly look at that system. So here we go. Here are implants. You can see this character doesn't have a lot because I had not put a lot of time into him. Let's see, what am I actually having equipped? Survivalist 4. This is like my favorite implant I like to use a lot. It vastly speeds up the downtime I have between engagements by making my shield regenerate faster. And Assimilate. I don't actually use Assimilate very much on Light Assault these days because I like Athlete. It just feels really great to me. Now, each of these confers a measurable but advantage in combat, but not one that's going to cause you to win fights, heads-up fights that you would otherwise lose. The bad idea? Blank canvas template? What's that mean, Lex? Kai resource overhaul phase 2 when? Yeah. You and A-Flick want to know. A lot of people want to know that. But again, that's not the main thing I really care about right now. I'm just looking at this system. So, there were a few problems with implants, right? One of them is the fact that there are these certain implants that are called, what are they called? These are all perfect. I'm going to actually swap over to my other character that I put more work into. So I'll show this off better. Okay. Implants. As you can see, this character has many more implants. On my light assault, I like to use Athlete 5, Survivalist 5. I'm sure it's not technically the best, but it's to me what I think feels the best to me. I have Assimilate maxed out. I also have Sensor Shield maxed out. I have Symbiote maxed out. I have Safeguard maxed out. I have Regeneration maxed out. It takes a lot of time to max these things out, or a lot of cash, because you can buy packs of implants. You can buy implant loot boxes in the depot for either in-game certs or out-of-game cash. I think the community has more or less either resigned itself or accepted this system. And it's one of the only places in the game where you can buy, there's an incentive to actually pay in money to speed up a meaningful progression path. Because if you're at a certain level of skill, putting the cherry on top with the right implants will make a difference. A small but measurable amount of the time. If you're not very good at the game, then nothing outweighs getting good. Not a single microtransaction outweighs getting good, or finding people to play with. But this is a system that Rel and company worked on to find a way to bring more income streams into PlanetSide, and it seems to be a successful one. And we still got new implants today. There was some drama, actually, a few months ago, if I remember right, about the Firestorm implant, which was an implant that was introduced that was supposed to, I think it increased your fire rate after a kill. And people flipped their shit about it because it was perceived as an advantage in firefights. Now, you look at an implant like Assimilate. Do I have Assimilate on anywhere here? Yeah, I must have my heavy assault. Look at an implant like Assimilate. On headshot kill, instantly restore 200 shield and 10% of your maximum ability energy. If you're playing heavy assault, you get 200 shield back plus 10% of your overshield back. That's 240 shields. Is that a better advantage than getting a fire rate increase? It probably is. But the fact that it affects you versus affecting enemy players seems to be where people draw the line. If someone's going to be able to do more damage because of an implant, not allowed. And that's that sense of like Western core gamer morality that's drawing those distinctions. And, RPG walked that one back. I'm not sure if Firestorm does today, but I think it got walked back, right? Lex, the implant system, it's in its original design, it was a way to have a choice of which annoying gameplay mechanic of the game you wanted to avoid. Right, like Battle Hardened with Screen Flinch. Nowadays, it's a way to get half-baked and turn-level gameplay design ideas into the game. Well, that's a simplification. Henry, you have every implant maxed in your NC character? Holy shit. Missing the forest for the trees is the principle of the design idea. I don't think the purpose of implants was to... this is going to sound like... I'm sure people are excited to introduce new gameplay into the game, but I'm pretty sure implants needed to make money. And I don't necessarily want to get stuck in this part of the discussion. I think if implants can add some interesting gameplay into the game, that's great. And they give people something to min-max over, which is fun for a lot of people. Whether or not the implants are well designed themselves, I'm not really that interested in right now. You don't care if they're to make money, but interesting gameplay means different things to different people, right? Yeah. Yeah, Lex, there's a discussion to be had about whether the implants are well designed, like individually. I'm sure it's something we could spend time on today. I'm sure it's something we could spend time on, but I'm going to say not today. And honestly, I'm not in a position to debate it because I haven't put in the time to understand what everything does. Henry says, you think it's secretly good? Haven't used it too much. Do you have it? What are you referring to, Henry? What's secretly good? Oh, Firestorm? Firestorm. All right. You can see what it does. This is alphabetical order, right? Oh, yeah, okay. So this does still have the rate of fire effect. Let's see, if you max it out, killing an enemy increases the rate of fire by 8% for 3 seconds. And a headshot kill will increase this duration to 5 seconds. While this effect is active, your recoil and cone of fire bloom suffer significantly. Yeah, an 8% rate of fire for 8 seconds in exchange for less accuracy is probably not a good trade-off. This is the nerfed state, right? Right. I don't remember what it was like when it first came out. So yeah, like my overall impression about the way that this affects my gameplay is like not a lot. Occasionally I'll check to see if someone killed me in a way that feels weird. I'll look at their implants. I'm like, oh, this guy has counterintelligence. That's a weird pick. But, you know, if someone can make it work, I think that's actually really great. What else? So one of the bits of the system that I think people took issue with were these kinds of implants. And what are they called? Oh, they're called exceptional implants. That's the word for them. These exceptional implants. These exceptional implants are basically rare drops from the implant loot boxes. And for a long time, the only way to get them was to pull loot box after loot box after loot box until you got them. Eventually, these got rolled out into some of these store bundles, so you could just buy them if you wanted them for one price, and you knew you were going to get it. But again, depending on what you think about the power of some of these implants, and you'll know that I'm not using them on anything other than, let's see, I think on my medic I'm using Carapace. So this is one of the standout examples of an implant that synergizes so well with a class that not having it can be a major feels bad, man. So this, I think, maybe pushes the line of being like a little pay to win. But it feels to me like an exception to the rule. What does Firestorm cost to craft? A lower recoil weapon like the NS11C can work great with it. Henry, you're trying to provoke me, I can tell. You know I love the NS11C. It costs the same as everything else, looks like. Craft implants. Oh, 3,500, yeah. I could make it. I'm not sure where I'd use it, though. And yeah, one of the things that also came in, I think around, I think it came in before, so yeah, the other demand, sorry, I'm not saying this well. If I'm remembering the sequence of events correctly, was an ability to make the implant that you were lacking directly, rather than pull them from the loot boxes. Again, early on, everything was loot boxes, and over time, that got softened to where you could craft implants. And then you could buy the exceptionals from bundles, and then eventually exceptional crafting. So, but if I see a person who can't hit headshots using Carapace, I'll beat him every time. If I can't hit headshots. If I see a person who spent hundreds of dollars to get perfect implant set up, but is not playing in a way that is smart alongside his fellow faction members, then he'll die every time because he's taking shitty angles. PlanetSide's a brutal game that brutally punishes lack of awareness and lack of playing together. It does not punish you very much for not having the right microtransactions. And that's why, to me, PlanetSide's always felt like a fair experience in terms of using my money. And it's a game I usually feel enthusiastic to support with my wallet. Kai, did you already cover the period where they were powered by chargers or something? No, I didn't talk about that incarnation of implants. I don't remember how it worked very well. I remember it was very weird, though. Okay. I think that's it for the PlanetSide part of this talk. And I need to leave plenty of time for the next part because I think it's going to be pretty long. And what I'm going to be doing is pivoting over to Guild Wars 2. No, let's not restart for a Steam update right now. And like Plus Hyper is going to log into the game and have a look. I guess I realized I forgot to think about how the incentives played out in PlanetSide not for our side, the gamer side, but for the developer side. I guess if I could put a bow on it, the thing that I would say would be that if you look at the way that the cash shop works in PlanetSide 2 and ask yourself, what focuses of effort are would developers of PlanetSide 2 be incentivized to pursue in order to maximize return? So what do they sell in the shop? They sell boosts. Experience boosts, resource boosts, and what's the other one? Experience, resources, merit. So anything that gave players a good reason to spend experience or resources or merit above and beyond what was there before would incentivize the buying of boosts. So what would that be? Well, let's think of an example. How about the ASP system, Advanced Specialization Program? That's a system that, by the way, when it came out, I think was only available to subscribers of the game. Cash incentive. What else can we think about for PlanetSide? An incentive. I guess the implant system, that there's always an incentive. There was a high incentive before a lot of the softening of the implant acquisition occurred to bring in more and more implants into the game because players would have to play the loot box game in order to get those implants. Now that you can craft the implant you want, I don't think that incentive is very strong. NSO is only for members. Does that count? Yeah, that's going to change though, right? So yeah, we are expecting. So NSO, for those who don't know, are a fourth faction for PlanetSide, and the way they work today in the game is you have to be a member, which is a $15 a month subscription, just like World of Warcraft. You pay for not just PlanetSide, but a few games, one of which PlanetSide is one. And that subscription gates access to this fourth faction. And this fourth faction, whenever you log onto a continent, you'll be automatically allied with whoever the lowest population faction is. Now, what's the appeal to playing this faction? Here's the thing. They're not more powerful than the other factions. They're just another faction. I think if the NSO had a way to play the game that was more powerful or more appealing in some way, compared to playing one of the vanilla factions, TRNC or VS, then I think you can make an argument to say that there was too strong of an incentive. We do know that changes and elaboration on the NSO faction are coming into the game this year. I think it's the next big update that RPG is working on. And so, that would suggest that that developers are pursuing an incentive to develop a system that is gated behind a subscription cost. However, I think that the NSO changes are coming with some changes to the way access to NSO works. And if my memory is correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, I think what that breaks down as, the way it breaks down is that if you're a subscriber and you're playing NSO, you can pick the faction you ally to. It's no longer picked for you. However, if you're playing NSO and you're not a subscriber, then you're automatically assigned to be allied to the lowest population faction. I think that's the way it's going to break down. We'll see if there are other gates in there. Again, if you want to play with the NC, just play an NC character. I don't see those incentives as being too much. So whenever we're thinking about incentives, like especially when it comes to paying in money, I think the proper way to look at it is, are these incentives so strong that they overcome ways of playing the game that are more in line with the core promises of the game? Or that are more in line with... yeah, actually, I think I put it right the first time. Actually, this would be interesting. Let's do this first. So there's this great resource called Guild Wars 2 Efficiency that will allow you to plug your API key for Guild Wars in. And it'll give you all these cool numbers and metrics about your account. So here's some truth time for yours truly. Let's see what my account is worth. Drum roll, please. My account value took a big dive. Look at that. I lost almost 2,000 gold in one day. In 5 minutes. Good morning, Young. So what I actually wanted to look at is, I think there's a stat here for the amount of gold value in your account represented by gem store purchases. I think it's in here somewhere. I'm going to see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So here you can see account value excluding gem stores. Is this zoomed in enough? Can y'all tell? So among people who registered on this website, my account is rank 68,000 in terms of overall value. This is the value of all the stuff on my account, all the stuff that I've bought, all the stuff that I've grinded. Not very good. But if I exclude gem store purchases, if I exclude value I've added by paying in real money, then my rank drops from 68,000 to 81,000. More than half my account value apparently comes from money I've paid in. So I have exchanged the need to do things in-game with my ability to bring in money from outside the game. What else can I see here? So even though I'm ranked 81,000, apparently I'm higher than 72% of accounts. Interesting. Okay, let's hop in game. Young, we are talking about monetization microtransactions today. Just having a loose discussion about how... There it is. All right. Let's have a look. Okay. So it's going to be hard to look at anything about my character without tripping over a microtransaction. Let's have a look. Where are we? We're in a living world map. Season 4. If you were playing at the time that this content was released during a roughly... Actually, I think that the content gap was like 6 months. So if you're playing during the 6 months, you got this for free. But if you weren't playing at that time, then you have to pay a small microtransaction to gain access to this. Although the game is free to play, the living world content is only free to play to you if you're playing at the time that it's current. What do we see at first? Login reward. This is just something everyone gets, not a transaction. And daily quests. What else? I have mail. What's this mail? encloses your yield from your ongoing assignments. Another shipment will be sent tomorrow. Remember, you can always change the locations your teams are gathering from at the Black Line Requisition teams post in your home instance. This is a microtransaction. Something that I bought from the Guild Wars 2 store that delivers me resources every day when I log in for free. And I get to pick what I want when I get. So let's see what I actually got here. I got a vial of thin blood and 2 vials of potent blood. If I were to sell these on the trading post, I would get back roughly 64 copper and 380. So like 4.5 silver. Big whoop. It's the kind of thing that adds up to a lot if you're logging in every single day, which a lot of the things in the system are built to incentivize you to do. Logging in every day. So now that we're at the inventory screen, what else? Okay, let's have a look at this over here. See this extra row of inventory here at the top? These are called shared inventory slots, and you can only acquire them, yes, on the in-game store. Shared inventory slots. What's cool about these shared inventory slots is they're kind of like a bank that's on you all the time. Every single character on your account uses these same shared inventory slots. So if you have like a really hyper valuable gizmo or something like that you would normally have to shuttle between your characters to use, then instead you can buy a shared inventory slot, park it there. And now every single character that I have will have access to, like for example, these portal tomes. God, there's so much to talk about. Jesus. First, here's shared inventory slots. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have 15 shared inventory slots. But if I was going to buy those straight out without any discounts or deals, 2,800 gems times 3. That's 8,400 gems. Let's see how much it costs to buy 8,400 gems. Over $100. And I'm probably going to have to edit that because I realized y'all could see a little bit of my information that I probably shouldn't be showing on the screen. Rip my face. So yeah. This is over $100 worth of microtransactions. I don't think I paid that much for it. I think there were some deals and stuff. But it just goes to show you how much you can buy convenience in this game. What else? I think the most popular convenience item in all of Guild Wars 2 is this guy. The Copperfed Salvage-O-Matic. It costs $10 to buy. And what it does is it's a solution to a problem that's created by the way Guild Wars 2's economy works. So let's have a look at how it works. How can I show this off? Let me think. I actually haven't bought in-game salvage kits for so long, I'm not sure where to go. Let's go to one of the main cities. So if you're playing Guild Wars 2 a lot, for the most part, you're going to be wanting to buy a lot of these quality of life things. You're going to be buying a lot of these solutions to problems that were created by the game designers. Now, you can argue whether the game was designed with these solutions in mind, or where the game was designed in a certain way, a solution was figured out later and then sold to the player. Like, it's complicated, right? It's not obviously all malicious. But the day-to-day loop of gaming for an average Guild Wars 2 gamer, whenever a new quality of life item comes out, players want to get these as soon as possible because they so drastically improve your efficiency in actually playing the game but they're hard to overlook. I'm going to try to find... hang on a second here. See if I can find a merchant who will sell me salvage stuff. Gathering merchant?
You buying or selling?
I don't think this is it. No. Okay, well, I'm not going to find it. So if you don't have... So the cool thing about this copper-fed salvage-o-matic is that the gear you get in Guild Wars 2, by and large, is not gear that you use. You get all these crappy little items, and what you do with these items isn't you don't actually use them or sell them. Rather, you salvage them from materials. The materials that comes from the salvaging of gear is what actually holds value in Guild Wars 2 and what helps you accrue wealth. Or craft the things you actually care about. So you're doing a lot of salvaging all the time. It's pretty common for me to salvage a few hundred items in any game session. And if you're playing without paying any money into the shop or using the shop at all, then you have to buy a salvage kit with a limited number of uses. And you have to keep replenishing that supply of salvage kits. It just creates this tax on your time. Where you're going back and forth these merchants just to buy stuff so you can actually salvage, so you can craft stuff the shit you want. You can see how heavily gated this is in terms of time, right? So this copper-fed salvage-o-matic mitigates that by simply dinging your wallet for a certain amount of currency every single time you salvage something, and it never runs out. And I have a few variants of a salvage-o-matic. One that drains more money from your wallet, but is better for salvaging higher level stuff. Man, there's so much. So here I'm in the main city, right? This is Lion's Arch. It is ostensibly the neutral city and largest player hub in the game. But only if you don't use the in-game shop. Because if you use the in-game shop, your hub actually looks a lot more like this. Welcome to the Mistlock Sanctuary, a compressed hub of all the city services in one small area, with a few unique aspects to it. The thing that in Guild Wars 2 is called Dungeons is actually a legacy system that came out at launch and has not been iterated on at all. So what do we have here? Dungeon, Fractals of the Mist. The version of Dungeons in Guild Wars 2, 5-player instance PvE content that is actually played today are these, Fractals of the Mist. In this particular lobby, this particular player hub has easy access to the Fractal portal and to Fractal merchants that will sell you stuff that you can get in exchange for stuff you accrue while playing Fractals. So if you like doing 5-player instance content, this is a major convenience item. Also, it introduced this, a convenience area that had portals to every single part of the world. Crafting. And for any truly productive player of Guild Wars 2, very important, a Mystic Forge conduit, where a lot of the high-end crafting in the game is actually done. Yasuko, hey, what's up? We caught each other this time. This makes you want to play the game so bad, you know, to be sucked in. I'm in that state right now. I'm actually getting sucked back into Guild Wars 2. And it may seem from this exploration that I'm going down that I actually am assassinating Guild Wars 2, but I actually like this game a lot. But I think the thing that I'm really interested in thinking about is incentives, again, and the macro effects of all these microtransactions. I hope I'm painting a picture here of how Guild Wars 2 works with quality of life. And it's always trying to identify and sell you quality of life improvements. And it needs to be said that when a game has a systematic way of doing that, it creates an incentive for the game to create features that are unpleasant to use that can be made more pleasant by selling you a microtransaction to mitigate it. Hey, you're Vand. Oh, thank you for saying something, dude. And welcome to the discussion. This is a bit of a highbrow one, I think. I'm not sure if a lot of people are actually interested in hearing what I have to say about this. But we're going to find out. We're going to find out. And there are 1,000 other quality of life things you can buy. And just to interrupt myself again, Yaska, if you want to talk about Guild Wars 2, you're in luck, because I have just booked 4 weeks of Guild Wars 2 related interviews for the podcast. For the next month, there'll be a lot of Guild Wars 2 on the channel. It's too easy to listen to while exploring around Guild Wars 2. Hey, there it is. Consume content while you're consuming content. So actually, Van, I posted the schedule on my my Discord if you want to have a look. But I can just tell you, I'm going to have a couple of community members and content creators. One, Brazil, who is not really in the content game anymore, but he used to be kind of big. I'm going to be having on DeRoyer, who, again, also has fallen off with content, but is still doing some things. And I've also invited Tom Abernathy, who is the studio narrative director on. And I think, technically, Bobby Stein's boss, who I had on a few months ago. So that'll be fun. And I'll be having on Josh Foreman, who is an ex-ReNet developer and is famous for being responsible for Super Adventure Box. So that's exciting. I also heard back from another developer today at ReNet who I'm scheduling with, but I'm not going to announce that until it's all said and done. So that should be fun. Word. Yeah, that was a good chat with Bobby. I like him a lot. Okay. So, quality of life is one half of what Guild Wars 2 is constantly trying to sell you. The other half of what it's constantly trying to sell you, and I think what actually tends to hit more for me, is the cosmetic stuff. So let's have a look at my character. This is my level 80 warrior. I'm currently wearing 1, 2, 3 pieces of Gemstore armor. Cosmetically, anyway. The Phalanx chest, Phalanx legs, and the boots. These are all pieces of armor from a Phalanx armor set. I bought in the Gemstore forever ago because I thought it was very cool looking. And the way I applied these skins to my armor is by buying transmutation charges on the trading post, which you can buy 25 charges, so that's 25 armor skin changes for 600 gems, which is roughly $7.50 cash money, US dollars. So it's like $7.50 divided by 25. That's going to be $0.30. 30 cents per skin change. Pay to wear. Big true, Kai. Big true. And again, I'm not necessarily trying to assassinate Guild Wars 2 because it's actually lauded for having what is considered to be a fairly fair system of monetization. Rather, I again want to explore the incentives that these create with players and with the developers. So, with the quality of life stuff we've already established, that when you announce you're going to sell quality of life stuff on the store, it creates an incentive for you as a developer to make poor quality of life you can sell. And whether or not you're actually doing that, I think the gamers as consumers are starting to wake up to that fact. And companies are going to have to start answering for that more and more, at least in the Western markets. And we'll see how it goes. But I think we're going to see more and more questioning of these things, questioning of boosts, questioning of conveniences, questioning of all this stuff. And Guild Wars 2 is a game that when it came out, you had to buy to play it. And I think even though it's technically free to play now, the experience you want in Guild Wars 2 isn't free to play. The experience you want is gated behind buying the expansions. Because buying the expansions is what gives you access to your elite specializations for each and every class in the game, which is the way almost everyone plays the game. Core specializations certainly have some places where they're used. Core builds, builds using only core traits, but they're the exception, not the rule. And when it comes to these, because elite specs are gated behind expansion purposes, it creates an incentive, for a financial incentive for ArenaNet to give their elite specs, when they introduce them, a power inflation and make them stronger than the other options. So people are incentivized to buy the expansion so they can get to the power level of everyone else. And here's where I stop enjoying these kinds of systems. Not because they're not fair on the individual level, but because in aggregate, they create a system of incentives that conflicts and creates an antagonistic relationship between the developer and the player. Cosmetics. Cosmetics are something of a sore topic for me in Guild Wars 2. I'll tell you why. So Guild Wars 2 is kind of unique in that it doesn't have a gear treadmill of any kind. So let's have a look at my armor. I'm using an Ascended sword. This Ascended sword I probably crafted like 3 or 4 years ago. There is no gear in the game of a higher power level than the Ascended quality level. This Ascended eye level. Let's think of it as. And ever since 2013, when Ascended gear was introduced, or it might have been late 2012, I don't remember. I wasn't playing at the time. This has never changed. What does exist? How do people progress their characters in this game? Well, there are some things like masteries that have some kind of light progression elements, and there's certainly like unlocking all of your abilities, but this is something that most players do very, very early on. The late game progression that is available to you that actually lets you stand out from other people is cosmetic. So here's the cosmetic that I'm most proud of in the whole game. Let me show you. Will it show me the in-combat animation? No, it won't. This is the Raid Legendary Armor. And in order to acquire it, you have to get... what is it? Like 250 Raid boss kills within the first 4 Raid wings of the game. It took me a few years to grind this out. And the Raid content in Guild Wars 2 is of a respectable difficulty. I had a lot of fun pursuing this because I like to raid. PvE raids are one of my favorite things to do in games. And when the raiding is attached to a incentive that I really enjoy, I felt really incentivized to pursue this armor. So what's cool about this armor other than how it looks? Well, what's cool about it is that I can, whenever I want, at the drop of a hat, change the stat allocation. So normally when I'm crafting Ascended gear, I'm picking a stat when I create it. And that stat allocation is frozen at the time of creation. And if I want to have an Assassin's chest versus a Berserker's chest, I have to craft 2 pieces of armor. But Legendary armor is amorphous. You can change the stat allocation anytime you want, which allows you to play multiple builds with the same set of armor. Very cool. But this was a convenience item that was not sold in the gem store. This is a convenience item that was put in the game. And to me, that felt amazing. But let's talk about a raid item that didn't feel amazing. Wonder if it's still in the store. Let's have a look. I'm not seeing it here. Hang on. See if I can find it in the wardrobe. Glider skins. The Soul River Glider. The Soul River in Guild Wars 2 is a feature of the very first raid wing, the Forsaken Thicket. After you kill the Veil Guardian, the very first raid boss of Guild Wars 2, the vines fall over this entrance. You go into this dark tunnel, you kill some enemies, and then you enter a gauntlet where you have to run down this path across this Soul River while this wall of death is chasing you, like Indiana Jones style. And it's called the Soul River. So when the raids came out, one of the big questions was, what kind of rewards are going to come from the raids? And the legendary armor was promised up front. Up front, it was announced with the expansion that legendary raid armor would be a thing. Hype, man. Fucking hype. Let's do this. It looks great. It's a convenience item that's not in the gem store. Holy shit. Is Guild Wars 2 actually putting stuff out of the gem store into the game? And then the Soul River Glider was data mined. And everyone thought that this cosmetic item, which let you change the way your glider looked, which is one of a very small number of glider skins that was in the game shortly after the expansion Heart of Thorns was introduced. People thought it was going to come from the raid, because they knew Soul River was in the raid. It made sense, right? Maybe it's a rare drop. And people were trying to figure out, oh, how do I get this Soul River Glider? Like, what do we have to do? Is it some hidden achievement? And then one day, the Soul River Glider appeared on the in-game store. And that moment told me very clearly sent a very clear signal to the community that glider skins came from the cash shop, period. If you wanted to customize the way your glider looked, like this guy, you gotta pay. You can't play the game to customize the way your glider, something you use all the time, looks. This is a dimension of your wallet that everyone shows off. Like a gold chain hanging out of their fucking pocket. And that's not all. Oh, I can't use mounts here. Let's go back to where we were. So, when it comes time for expansion 2, Path of Fire, Arena introduced a new feature like gliders that could be progressed in terms of functionality by playing in-game, but whose look came entirely from cash shop purchases. Mounts. Check out this bad boy. Anybody want to guess how much money this mount skin cost me? Anybody want to guess how many mount skins are available in the game? How many mount skins drop from bosses? How many mount skins come from chests and secret areas? How many mount skins come from high rating in PvP? How many mount skins come from being a lifetime killer in World vs. World? 0. 0 mount skins come from playing the game. Every single mount skin in Guild Wars 2 can only be bought through the cash shop. And if you don't want to do what I did and pay $25 for this mount, only way to get mounts is through... Oh, come on. Go faster. So when mounts first came into the gem store, you could only get them through mount adoption licenses. Seems cool, right? You pay 400 gems, which is $5, and you get a mount. The trick is, it's a loot box. It's a friendly loot box. If you unlock a mount skin, you can't unlock the same mount skin twice from the first box. So let's see. This particular loot box has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 30 options. So if you buy 30 times 400, 12,000 gems, which is $150. If you pay $150, you are guaranteed to get every single skin from this loot box. After a community outcry, they introduced these. The Mount Selection License, where you can pay $15 to get any one mount from the same box. But it took the community crying out to get this. Why? Because ArenaNet was incentivized to do whatever they could get you to do to get these mount skins by paying cash. What a feels bad man. And it doesn't end there. See this guy? Look at this. Look at this guy. He's amazing, isn't he? This is like a wolf mount skin. This guy has the ability to teleport around. And there are certain portals in the game that only this mount can take. That's all in-game stuff. Nothing but the cash shop. But the way this guy looks is from the cash shop. But I actually got it just from playing the game. How did I do that? I got lucky, boys and girls. So, let's look at Black Lion keys. What are these? Black Lion keys are the keys to loot boxes that drop in the game. The game drops you loot boxes, but the only way to open them is by buying the key. If you care about your wallet, you can buy 25 keys for 2,100 gems, which is $25, I think, roughly. And yes, you can buy a boost. But leveling to 80 was eroded long before the boost. Wallet dump Deeg. I put a lot of money into Guild Wars because I love this game. I have played this game on this account for 3,300 hours. I'd say I've gotten my money's worth for all the money I put into this game. I don't feel bad about it. But I'll tell you what I do feel bad about. The fact that I can't earn any mount skins by playing the game. I feel bad that when a new raid comes into the game, there's no mounts or glider skins. I feel bad when a new badass weapon comes into the game, a weapon skin. The only way to get it is by opening Black Lion chests. Now, there is one thing you can say in favor of this gem store. And it's kind of weird. It's the only game that I've played that does this. But you can buy gems for gold. in Guild Wars 2. So remember how I said that 800 gems is about $10? Well, I can also just get gems by playing the game. Let's see what the conversion is. So for $10 worth of gems, costs in-game about 250 gold. I think I read somewhere that like an average gold per hour rate for someone who's for the average farmer is like 20 gold an hour. So you can call this 12 to 13 hours worth of farming. So you can either pay $10 or farm for 12 to 13 hours. Now, I'm sure there are people who can farm gold much faster. I'm sure there are also people who farm gold much slower. This creates this weird get-out-of-jail-free card that Arena has had for a long time, where people can say, oh, anything in the gem store is actually in-game content because you can buy it with the gold standard. So let's talk about the effect that this has on players. So we're incentivized to either open our wallets or grind a lot of gold. Now, Guild Wars 2 is a game that is really cool because I can go to literally any zone in the game. Let's go to this zone, the Plains of Ashford. Plains of Ashford is the starting zone for Char. One of the 5-player races. And look at this. My health shrunk. I had like 21,000 health, and now I have 1,300 health. That's because this game scales me down when I go to a new zone. If it's a lower level zone than max level. This has the cool effect of keeping old content interesting. So let's actually just look at something here. Yeah, this is great. Perfect example. We're going to pivot over to the human starting zone because there's a world boss that's available. A world boss is one of the coolest parts of Guild Wars 2. I love these things. So here there's an event going on. Underworld creatures are invading the Abbey. Am I going the wrong way? I don't have my hands set up the way I usually do when I play this game, so I'm a little awkward. It's like no one's here. It's pretty face roll even when you're low level, so it's not like me being higher levels having much of an effect on this. Right in the nostalgia feels. So Guild Wars 2 is a game that encourages you to go back to its early zones, and kind of makes it kind of fair to do so. At what point was I building to by showing this? I got so excited about the world boss, I forgot what I was going to say. Let me think. What were we talking about? Oh my god, help me guys. What was I talking about before I came here? Oh, the currency conversion. Get out of jail card for the developers. Oh yeah! The gold standard. This is about the gold standard. So, let's talk about why you do content like this. For a lot of players, this is the very first world boss they ever get to. Look at this thing. Holy shit. Okay. Yeah, we stack up over here. And we kill this thing. I haven't done this in a long time. And the portals come up, right? Oh no, they're still attacking.
You can't stop me. Adrenaline rush.
So the reason you do content like this traditionally in MMOs is because it drops gear that you want, or cosmetics that you want. But the Shadow Behemoth isn't going to drop any gear that I need, ever. And it's not because it's a low-level event. It's because, outside of a few exceptions, encounters in Guild Wars 2 don't drop things that are unique. Rather, they drop you things you can convert to gold, like materials, armor that you can convert to materials, tokens that you can cash in for things. And because the cash shop all comes back to a gold standard for players who have a lot of in-game wealth or for players who can't pay with the cash shop, what that does is it incentivizes players to only play the content that has the easiest, most rapid gold return in the game. World bosses are great because you're highly likely to finish them and the gold payout is moderate. And they're actually just very fun. They're kind of noob magnets in that way. Generally speaking, you won't find veteran players who know how to farm gold playing world bosses, outside of a few exceptions. Again, incentives, boys and girls. This design of having the game set up in such a way so that you can buy anything in the cash shop with gold means gold is the most important thing in the game. Because there are so many things you just cannot get any other way. Which means only the fastest gold-making activities are valued by savvy members of the community. Yeah, well, it took a longer to click for me probably because I'm actually fighting. And I'm a little distracted. I do want to kill this boss and show you guys the loot. I think we'll kill him next burn. So this is one of the things about Guild Wars 2 that I actually tend to have trouble with. But thankfully, Guild Wars 2 attracts a wide variety of players. And it attracts enough of a variety of players that a lot of people will just do stuff just because it's fun. I'll give you an example. One of the guilds I'm a part of is called Sand. I actually rep them for a little bit. And what's so cool about Sand? Well, Sand's entire purpose is to run a single map in the game called Dry Top. And that map has a few unique rewards that a few people care about. But for the most part, it's just a social community. So let's see what we got for our troubles. About what? 10 minutes of effort. Not a ton of skill. I got a level 80 rare, which I'm going to salvage. I got a level 80 uncommon. Oh, sorry, fine. That I'll salvage. And I got an emerald crystal, which I will sell. And a dragonite ore, which I have way too much of and can't get rid of it at a fast enough rate. I also got a piece of rare and uncommon unidentified gear. It's just down here. So let's actually go ahead and see what this turns into. So I just spent about 2 silver to salvage these things. I got some luck. This is going to slowly increase my magic find over time. This is going to be worth a silver 30. This stick section is worth 66. So let's call it 2 silver. This is worth nothing. This is worth a bit more. So we're up to 3.5 silver. Wood. Let's see, we're up to 76. So 2, that's 5 silver. Ecto, now we're talking. So this is most of the value that we got out of this is the Ecto. This comes from rares. This is going to be worth 62 silver, roughly. Call it 63 silver. It's like the 5 or 6 I got from other stuff. It's like 70 silver, 0.7 gold for our efforts. A Sigil of Demon Slaying, which I can't sell to anyone. Anyway. Incentives. So, a couple of the macro effects that I observe with Guild Wars 2 is that because I think that Guild Wars 2 in general does not give enough unique reasons for players to play unique content. I think one of the strongest things that MMORPGs can do, generally speaking, is to give an element of player progression that's tied to a piece of content in some way. And Guild Wars 2 softens the hell out of that in the name of the cash shop, in the name of convenience, in the name of so many things. Guild Wars 2 is a game that I love. I think it has some of the most interesting lore. It has art that to me is unrivaled in the MMO space. It has the most fun combat of any MMO I've ever played. And it has a culture among the developers, I think, that is really like an artist collective. Maybe not every single department, but many, that I think is very cool. And they're a studio who doesn't crunch. And it's actually a game that that has taken on the difficult task of telling a linear story over the course of years, which is a hard thing to do. And they've done it all without selling you player power. But the choice to sell cosmetics, the choice to put convenience items in the store, and the gold standard all create incentives that drive player behavior and should drive developer behavior. And because of that, players are naturally suspicious of what developers do. And that is what I have to say about this topic. I think at the end of the day that a lot of gamers, people who play games, don't really want to have these conversations. And it's my observation, and it's one that I have trouble with because I don't identify with it, that a lot of people who play games just want to be asleep. They want to live in a dream of a fantasy world. And so when a microtransaction permeates the barrier between the real world and the fantasy, there can be upset. Or once we make an accommodation with that compromise, revisiting that accommodation and questioning it can be seen as stressful. I'm not advocating for any kind of design, but I will say that personally, the older I get, the more attracted I am to games who offer me one price for the whole experience. Flat fee. I'm to the point where I would like to see a game like a New World or a Guild Wars 2 or one of these games I really invested in. I want to try and experiment. Like, what if these games offered you what if you designed a game like this around the idea that you would require a $50 a month subscriber fee? $50 a month. That's $600 a year. Is there a market for something like that? I wonder. But the idea that you'd be able to have a game that's well supported and that doesn't require and that doesn't have a lot of weird incentives built into it to get you to buy more shit feels like something I would want to pay for these days. It's the same frustration I get when I'm listening to Spotify and I hear a fucking ad. How much money do I have to throw at Spotify to get rid of all the ads? How much money do I have to pay to not be asked to pay more? I don't like being the product. Kai, how did Guild Wars 2 monetization with the cash shop change when the game switched from buy to play to free to play? Let me think. I think that the cash shop didn't change. So Guild Wars 2 went free to play, I think, right before Path of Fire. Let me have a look at this. Guild Wars 2 free to play announcement. Oh, I fucked up my thing somehow. Yeah. Play for free today, August 29th, 2015. So actually, this was before the first expansion. So the cash shop didn't change at all. I guess the only change you can really suggest with the cash shop, well, with Heart of Thorns, there were two things about the cash shop that really changed. One is gliders came into the game. And so all of a sudden, there were glider skins that could only be acquired in the cash shop that weren't there before. There was no feature like gliders before Heart of Thorns. Although it is worth mentioning that there are a few exceptions of very high status items you can get that do confer glider skins in the game. There are a few exceptions to that rule. But yeah, up until this was announced about 6 weeks, I guess, before Heart of Thorns came out. So there was a 6-week period where you can play the entire Guild Wars 2 experience for free. Now, for a free account, there's some lockdowns, like you can't use the trading post, you can't like send mail to anybody. There's a lot of things that they do just to lock it down so people aren't abusing free accounts to do shit. I think you don't get the in-game daily rewards on a free account, but you can experience the content of the core game, the personal story, the Zhaitan arc. You can join dungeons, fractals, world versus world, PvP. But basically, this happened at the same time the Heart of Thorns came out, which cost as much as the game did up front. So they just did a flippy dip, where they said, rather than paying for Guild Wars 2, you're going to pay for Heart of Thorns. And if you don't pay, if you're not already a Guild Wars 2 player at this point, 3 years into the experience, we're going to give you a lockdown free-to-play experience for the old content that we don't care about anymore. That's what happened there. The other thing that really changed, I think, that's worth mentioning, I talked about the gold standard, right? So the gold standard applied to anything you buy with gold. And one of the most important things you can buy with gold in Guild Wars 2, from a status and cosmetic perspective, are Generation 1 legendary weapons. So each weapon type had a Generation 1 legendary skin. Legendary weapons are, they're kind of like legendary armor. You can change the stat on it however you want. But they're very cool. They have a really blingy cosmetic. They look incredible. People want them. And they take a lot to make. So what happened was, the way that it worked, and whenever you made a legendary weapon in the first generation, it was bind on equip, which meant you can put all this effort into making a legendary weapon and just sell it if you wanted to. So what that meant is that it created a market incentive for people to create legendaries and sell them, and it created incentive for people to buy money, so you can buy gold in the game. Like you buy 2,000-3,000 gold with a few $100s cash to get that legendary skin, rather than putting in the in-game effort. With Generation 2 legendaries, which started in Heart of Thorns, they went back on this. Generation 2 legendaries cannot be sold. So they took that out of the loop. However, you can buy most of the materials needed to make a Generation 2 legendary with gold bought with hard cash money. And I think for me, where I settle on all of this for Guild Wars 2 specifically, I think the gold standard is pretty boring. I want there to be good reasons to play content. And I guess at the end of the day, the cosmetic treadmill is not that compelling to me. And so Guild Wars 2 for me has become an MMO that I play where I completely ignore the loot. It's very weird. And it makes, for me, hunting for motivation to play a little inconsistent. Because in a game like World of Warcraft, it tells you how to play, it tells you what to do. There's a gear treadmill that you're always going down. It's a very clear path of progression. And as much as people may not like it, there is an advantage in having a clear path. And with Guild Wars 2, the most common problem I have with it is I get excited about the game, I sit down, and I say, what the fuck should I do? I have no incentive to do anything. My character, my warrior, has everything he needs. So I could get more characters set up with everything they need, but why? Once I get their combat pattern down, there's no there's nothing to chase. Nothing that confers status in the game. Nothing that people admire. And what there is in terms of status is things like transfusion effects, which are obnoxious, I think. So yeah, Guild Wars 2, a game that I love with a very weird, progressive, but also respectful monetization system that creates weird incentives that they're always trying to turn the knobs on. Does that mean the game isn't fun if your only incentive to play is to essentially work for progress? It's funny you mentioned that, Kai. So the most popular Guild Wars 2 streamer right now is Mighty Teapot. And he has a very interesting take on this that essentially echoes what you just said, is that he doesn't care about rewards. He only plays for the fun. He calls himself a for-fun gamer. I think it's pretty interesting because I don't think a lot of people play MMOs just for the moment-to-moment experience. I think most people play MMOs for the sense of progression and having a long-term goal to work for that they value for some reason. I don't know if you can really... I think that separating your daily experience of playing an MMO from long-term incentives creates a lot of uncertainty. And for me, that long-term incentive for a long time was Legendary Armor, which I finished in 2018. And ever since then, I've pretty much just logged in to play the story content. But I'm still so fascinated by the game that I think I might try to get back into raiding a little bit. And World vs. World is also a part of the game I haven't explored much at all, even though I know there's not much reward for doing so. Kai, that's why Planetside is so playable for you. Yeah. So Planetside has the luxury of being a PvP shooter, which creates a path of progression that doesn't have anything to do with the rewards in the game. And it's a much higher ceiling than Guild Wars, which even though it has a very complicated combat system, mastering it takes a lot less ability. the mastering Planet side does, I think. This is why when you play MMOs, you always play PvP, because instead of isn't grinding, it's about moment-to-moment fun. Yeah. The last time I had fun playing MMO PvP, I think the only MMO PvP I ever actually really enjoyed are Battlegrounds in World of Warcraft. I like it because they're kind of a more relaxed experience. Kind of like PlanetSide. It makes me curious to actually play World versus World in Guild Wars 2. Because it's at a large scale with hundreds of players as well. But a lot of MMO PvP over the years has boiled down to these like sweaty things, like you get Conquest mode in Guild Wars 2, which is a 5v5 thing, and it's just way too esportsy for me to care about it. The athleticism of the game doesn't interest me very much. And the equivalent would be arenas in World of Warcraft. Same thing. Like for me, I think that the fundamental thing about like serious competition is I only care about it if I know who the people are. And if I'm just some guy, I'm playing strangers all day, the fun goes away super fast. The most fun I've had with it is when I was playing Battlegrounds in Shadowlands with my brother and my coworker for a couple months while we were all three playing. Yaska, World v. World was awesome. Your guild years ago, which spawned from the Team Liquid forums, loved World v. World and pretty much got into hard because of World v. World. Not sure how it's changed over the years, but it used to be very fun. If there's any hook for me that's left in Guild Wars 2 that's really untouched, it is that game mode. And I think I'm going to make a concerted effort to explore it, even though I know it's not very healthy and it has low prospects of future development. There was this great moment from a Guild Wars 2 podcast I heard recently, where the guy who I'm interviewing this Wednesday, Brazil, leaked a little bit of partner discussion that happened years ago, where it was admitted by the then game director that the World versus World mode in Guild Wars 2 was basically done by some guy as a passion project in like a side room in the studio. And people didn't really know how it worked. Probably super biased, but honestly, the best competitive for PvP feel for you has always been with arena shooters or FPS games in general. I think I'm even close to kind of rivalries. But yes, I totally resonate with this. And this is why I play PlanetSide. I love shooters in PvP. For me, like, fantasy MMOs are much more aligned with that need for chill progression, where you're just kind of moving and working on long-term goals and enjoying being in the world and the social component of it. It's social, progression, and connection. And for me, the place I like to sweat is when I'm playing shooters. God, sad state of affairs when only truly massive multiplayer online game mode is dying. Yeah, World v. World. Well, I think it's less a comment on the quality of the mode, more a comment on how difficult it is to actually work on, is my understanding. But yeah, I mean, okay, let's talk about incentives again. So, you guys saw the way the cash shop worked for Guild Wars 2, right? Who do you think is buying all those cosmetics? And quality of life items. Do you guys think PvP players buy that stuff? Maybe a little bit. If you're a Conquest PvP player, you don't need to buy any of that stuff. Maybe the Salvage-O-Matic. But the places where a lot of these quality of life things shines when you're playing PvE content that drops a ton of shit everywhere. Maybe World versus World too, a little bit. I don't know. But I have the strong sense that Guild Wars 2's inertia, taking it into a post-launch world where the main content is PvE, even though it launched, they made big promises about it being a 3-mode game where 2 of them were PvP. I get the sense that a lot of that is just because people who do that content are the ones who buy from the store. Sweaty PvP players who have all day to play, maybe they're more likely to buy stuff with gold than to pay money. People who want a chill experience, they can just show up after work. Maybe they're more likely to pay with money. Incentives, bro. Well, I think I'm actually going to draw this little discussion to a close. I'm glad we talked about this, even though I'm not at all confident about the conclusions we've drawn. Much like the toxicity talk last week, this is a big idea, and it's one that we can talk about for a long time. So I hope that this will be like a launching point for discussion about this problem here on my channel. I want to remind everyone who's watching this that I have 4 weeks coming up of Guild Wars 2 podcast content. So today is, if you're watching this after the fact, it's May 17th. There's a very good probability that if you're watching this on YouTube, that you've already missed the Brazil interview. But I urge you to check out twitch.tv/DeekTV. I usually try to set up my interviews for Thursdays-ish, but honestly, if you really want to catch my content, Discord's the best way to keep up to date with what's going on. And for those of y'all who are watching me live, stuff's on YouTube. Yaska, how'd the toxicity talk go? Out of curiosity, I might have to check out the VOD. Was it about toxicity in PlanetSide 2 specifically, or something else? It was more of a generalized talk. He was riffing off of a Chris Kalecki article, ex-WoW developer. He wrote his take on toxicity, which I think turned out to be really focused on toxicity in match-made live service games. And my basic retort was, let's kill matchmaking, because it creates antisocial experiences. And of course, people are going to be assholes. That was my basic take on it. I don't think the right incentives are in place for people to treat each other like humans if there's not serious accountability for behavior. And one of the easiest ways to create accountability is just to have you see the person you're fucking over more times after you've done it. That's the easiest way to do it. Create real social consequences by empowering communities rather than singleton cures. Yes, honestly, you think the Final Fantasy MMO did a great job with grinding down toxic points, just simple things like eliminating opportunities for FOMO, competitiveness where it doesn't matter. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. The Final Fantasy MMO is not something I've put any time into because I don't find the IP very interesting. Never been a Final Fantasy guy. And let me think through something else too. So I'm going to try to do 2 pieces of discussion content every single week this month coming up. The podcast will be the podcast. You guys know what that is. But the Monday show might not always be Deep Thoughts. And part of it's because if nothing really interesting happens with relevance to y'all, or that really jumps out at me as being kind of interesting, like this particular thing, this is not a lot to do. So I'm going to come up with some alternatives for Deep Thoughts. And one of those ideas that I'm working on looks a little bit like a periodic planet-side podcast with multiple talking heads. So think about some of the prominent planet-side guys you know. 3 or 4 of us all sitting down to talk about what's going on in the game. How do the containment sites land? How do people feel about the latest campaign chapter? That kind of stuff. And if I do that, I hope it'll be something I can renew it like once a month or whenever there's content to discuss. But I gotta find other stuff to do too. Yasko, it'd be pretty darn interesting to see you dive into sustainable esports at some point. That's a topic I would have to learn a lot about, because serious esports is something that I don't have direct experience with. Sustainable esports. Sustainable in what way, Yaska? Kai, in the future, the character's head will be replaced by a stream from your webcam. Dude, I talked about that idea the other day. I think that idea is so fun. You think keeping competitive scenes alive, that kind of stuff. It's a big thing that came up and fell flat in the TF2 community. So they wanted to, TF2, yeah, that's an interesting case study, right? Is there any competitive TF2 played anywhere these days? Like, are people like organizing pickups and stuff? Overwatch went through, but fell short of expectations despite the money pumped in. Yeah, Overwatch esports, man. They had the franchises and stuff. They put a lot of effort into making Overwatch an esport. Other games like Dota 2 do so well despite Valve not having that great of a track record with support. Yeah, why does Overwatch not do well as an esport, but Dota does? It has something to do with like watchability, right? I think when it comes to shooters, there's always a watchability problem. Like, shooters are so fun to play, but when it comes to watching team shooters, I think it's very hard to show off. I guess things like Counter-Strike and Valorant do well, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it has to do with the simplicity of the presentation. Like Valorant, I noticed is paced in a way that it's very easy to track the action. Compared to like Overwatch, where watching it is like watching a fucking rainbow firework all the time. Some folks play TF2, most popular and accomplished player in that scene, Banny, somehow still played, usually wins everything. I think we talked about Banny before. Most of the pros in TF2 moved on to Overwatch or Valorant, but just completely fell face of the earth, though. Interesting. Yeah, I might need to like interview some people from those scenes. I wonder if I can find someone who played competitive TF2 who has TFC experience, because that would give me a connection to it. One person who I know is Reptile. I think he played early competitive TF2. Phaser would be great. I wonder if he'd talk to me. I think I actually reached out to Reptile last year to ask if he'd be interested in talking to me, but I never heard back from him. Maybe I'll renew that request. Phaser is a friend of mine. Yeah? Maybe I'll try to grab him and see what he thinks. Kai, maybe it's hard for people to relate to esports games where the meta is too different from live play. Yeah, there's probably something to that too. I just think like with esports, the main thing you need is mass appeal, right? Because if you don't have a certain number of people playing your game, then you can't create competitive games across the different skill levels. Like, it's so hard to make a game like that. I get why Overwatch 2 is going in this PvE direction, because man, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be successful as a PvE game than a PvP game, I think. Sorry, I shouldn't say easier. Simpler. I think it's more simple to be successful as a PvE game, but not necessarily easier. You see if you can interview Banny, such an insanely unique personality. Yasuka, can you suggest any like TF2 videos I can watch to get brushed up on some of its history? 'Cause I do find that interesting, but I wouldn't want to be so far out of my depth. And if you want to float me a few names to interview, just shoot me a DM on Discord so I don't forget. Because I Twitch chat I never come back to. Like I'll never see this again. Yeah, shoot it to me on Discord if you would, Yasuka. You can just DM me or put it in the gaming chat. Either way is fine. Kind of like in Overwatch, people have their favorite characters, and then in competitive environment, a lot of those characters are barely played. Right. Cool, man. I'll have a look at that. Thank you. That's good. I need like some fresh things. Keep my mind going. I also want to remind you, while we're heading into a thick season of podcasts, that I do have a Patreon. And if you are interested in supporting me with your wallet, and or you want to get your name in the credits of my podcasts, that would be the place to do it. Let me see if that link even works. Oh, I need to update that. Crap. Okay. That's the actual link. No, it's not. Darkstar? I know Darkstar. He plays there's a guy named Darkstar who plays TFC. He's really good. Was he a TF2 guy? Holy shit, man. Small world. Okay, so that first Patreon link actually was accurate. I don't know why my browser was doing a shit fit. You could look at PlanetSide 2 as well. The competitive scene is too different from live play for many people to take an interest. Even more mainstream attempts like Outfit Wars don't necessarily reflect the daily experience of the average player. Him on Phaser, main people should play with. And TF2 also play TFC at some point. Oh. Do you think there's much of an audience for talking to TF2 pros? Like, will people actually want to see that? It's like a Reddit community that would want to see that kind of content. Sounds interesting. Personally. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned PlanetSide 2 competitive stuff. I've actually been like, I've co-casted a few EU Spring Scrims in the last few weeks. And I've been thinking that I might try to motivate myself to play PlanetSide by actually jumping into some 6v6 pickups in the near future. Try to challenge myself a little bit. And learn about the competitive scene there. Small though it is. You always wish someone did like Thorin did. Are you familiar with Thorin from the CS scene? I'm not. Player history interviews. I actually love that stuff when you were younger. Was it like, did he like interview people about their history in a game? Oh, he interviewed Dahang. Yeah. Yeah, this is good stuff. Yeah, this is good stuff. Kai, if you think about MOBAs or more basic FPS games, the core gameplay for the average player is very similar to the esports gameplay, so anyone can relate to it no matter their skill level. That makes sense, Kai. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Well, hey guys, I actually am going to wrap this up. I could clearly talk to the two of y'all for hours and hours. But here's the deal. I'll be back on Wednesday night for the Guild Wars 2 podcast. Well, mainly Guild Wars 2, I think, with Brazil. Or as he's known today, Preston. Actually, he's not very involved in the game, but he has some hot takes. It's going to be a spicy interview, I think. I'm really excited about it. And I have, like I mentioned before, 4 straight weeks of Guild Wars 2 centric interviews lined up. So when I'm online streaming games, I'm probably going to try to find some Guild Wars stuff to do. Just to kind of be in the game, be in the headspace. And because I like it. But I'm going to be busy. And one of my commitments to myself, because last week, I don't know if you guys noticed, I didn't do any streaming of myself playing games. I got so busy working on content. I didn't think I load up a single video game last week. And all work and no play makes Deeg a dull boy. I gotta chase my muse too, not just use it. I mean, I gotta feed my muse, not just extract from it. So I'm gonna be trying to make time for gaming as I'm doing this, and we'll just see where it goes, guys. I'm thankful for you guys listening, for the discussion, for the support, and I love y'all. And I'm going to get the fuck out of here and find some food, as you do. So, follow me on Twitch. Subscribe on YouTube. All the things. And remember, as you go forward, and you're looking at the way that games are made, and especially the way that they try to get your money, is think about the way the incentives work for the people buying the transactions and for the people creating them. And ask yourself if you're okay with those incentives. Until next time, I'm Deeg. This is Deeg Thoughts. I'll catch you on the flip side.